Welcome to the Rush to Fail podcast. I'm your host, BJ Gramillion. This is episode now 11, which we did confirm today. We are on episode 11 now. So I have Ryan Zolin with us. Ryan is awesome, dude. He, you can see by his age, right? Younger guy. But he has done probably decades worth of experience just in a very short, compact time. And that's just something that I've always admired about him. And so I think a background on how I came across Ryan, I believe I listened to your podcast. Were you on Steve Trank's podcast?
Dude, okay, so I was on Steve's podcast, and I didn't realize that our offices are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then, we get people that will randomly fly out or randomly just pop into the office, and they'd walk in. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I remember there was a day where someone was like, hey, there's a guy that says he knows you. He's here to meet you. And I'm like, did we tell him I'm not here? And they're like, no, he's here right now. I'm like, oh. And I popped out there, and there you were.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was just so taken back. But I was actually like, I have to give this background. It was one of the coolest, like, unexpected meetings that I think I've ever had, where someone just came in and they were super genuine, nice, and it was awesome. So that was kind of like our first initial meeting, and then we've just kind of kept in touch since.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Yeah, because I remember looking you up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he literally is like, right down the road. Like, and so I just got in my truck, went down the road, and I'm like, I have to meet this kid. And obviously did not disappoint. And so, you know, we've talked off and on, and I've been able to watch you just, you know, obviously take off like crazy. So, maybe give us a little bit of background for those people that don't know you, obviously, that are not maybe in the real estate industry. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you got started with your business.
Sure. Yeah. So it's always tough, like, telling this story, like, cause every time you always add one extra thing or you forget one thing, but basically the overview is that I started off at 18. So I was fresh out of high school, no plan of college or anything, and didn't really know anything about the world. I was lost, confused. I got into real estate just because it seemed like the best plan of action. I had gone to a couple of those seminars and stuff, like, you know, the ones where in the back they charge you an extra 50 grand for all the stuff. But I was able to just kind of understand the value behind real estate, and I was able to put together that people always need a house to buy and sell. So it seemed like an industry that wasn't going to go anywhere. Ended up going to real estate school fresh at 18. It was like July of 2016. Fast forward, I mean, just the brief overview, I was on a team as an ISA, making calls 12, 16 hours a day. Took the skill set from making calls to a mentor, and I was like, let me make calls for you. I will do all the work, and then we'll split everything. So went from 10% to 50% pretty quickly. Then ended up giving value to him, which is a huge piece. I provided value before just going and asking to be partners. So after a year, we were the top team at the brokerage. We became partners. At 19 years old, I had 22, 23 agents working for me.
And who's this mentor of yours?
His name is Jeff Dorston.
Okay.
And he's an amazing guy. He owns a pizza shop over by ASU. My little background side note, my dad and mom moved us from Chicago to Arizona to start up a business. And it was all based around restaurant repair, and it evolved to including HVAC work. So I saw a lot of entrepreneurial, I saw a lot of sacrifice and risk and just business in general. But my connection to Jeff was through my father. My father takes care of Jeff's restaurant equipment and all that stuff, his ovens for pizza, and whatever, all that kind of stuff. I called Jeff just as the guy that was on the team when I was there, and I'm like, hey, like, what do I do? I'm on this team, and I was told I was going to get this percentage, but ended up being a smaller percentage than I thought. Closed like a handful of deals. I got like $900, and I'm like, peace out. So fortunately, Jeff was there, took me under his wing, mentor, mentee. We became business partners. We were the top team at the brokerage. Everything in traditional real estate was screaming Ryan Zolin's going to be successful. The only thing that sucked was that Ryan Zolin wasn't happy. So 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, like legitimately first in, last out. Nights and weekends, you couldn't even see me because I was out with clients. I was out door knocking, open houses, you name it, I was doing it. My best year was 130, which still, that's a good living, but 130 for that, I'm like 12 years old right now. Like, is this going to actually be what I do for the next 40 years happily? No way. So I ended up taking a pretty big risk. I was introduced to Templeton Walker, and he went over to eXp Realty, which is an MLM. And I tried bringing my partner. I tried bringing our entire brokerage actually over to that brokerage. And they told me there was no money in fix and flip and there's no money in wholesaling. And I was like,
Wow.
Again, you don't know what you don't know. I'm 19. What I could tell you, I realized pretty quickly was the reason the brokerage didn't want me to wholesale was because they don't get anything from it. So I made a judgment decision. I split from the business partner. I fired 21 out of 22 agents, and I left the brokerage that I made 130K at the previous year. Just because of a belief that I thought there was more opportunity in wholesaling, and I failed miserably the next year. It was like straight down. Through connections I had from the team I was on, through what I was able to create with Jeff, and then just through who Temp had, I got introduced to Steve Trang. So that's kind of like the overview as to how Steve came into the picture. And
Yeah.
Steve knew who I was from my traditional experience. I was doing pretty well. So Steve was inclined to give me an offer that I couldn't really turn down to go over to his brokerage. And given that I was going in the wrong direction, Steve was kind of the only light at the end of the tunnel I had. So Steve introduced me to a bunch of people, opened up doors and conversations that I never would have been able to do on my own. Jamil Damji, Brent Daniels, Ryan Pineda, all these guys that I really got to be the guinea pig for their communities. So I saw a lot of these guys launch their mentorships, their communities, and really, I guess even say just become that guru, that influencer, the celebrity. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. Like, these guys are impacting other people. They're showing others how to get started and actually create wealth rather than just going and getting a real estate license. So fast forward then, I mean, I was first student in Jamil's program, Astro Flipping, to then
Wow.
learning everything about wholesaling, trying direct to seller, creative finance, you name it, I did it. And then I kind of fell into a strategy that we specialize in now, which was because I had no money, I was able to get a deal from an agent that costed me $0. And it was at my worst point in my life where I really needed the money and I was about to be out of real estate after crushing it for 4 years. But I closed the deal for 30K from an agent and I never looked back. So that next year, I mean, it was a $250,000. The year after that was like 1.3. The year after that was like 2.4.
Wow.
Last year was a little bit of a down year, but the beauty behind this strategy is it doesn't cost you anything. So
Yeah, man, so much to unpack right there. So
that's the journey.
yeah, I love it. And so Steve Trang, what was it that he provided the value for you? Because I know he was in traditional real estate. So
Yeah.
did you go to him for like the wholesaling flipping side, or was it just like traditional stuff?
So the reason I left the partner I had when I was over at the brokerage was because Temp sat down with me kind of like this, but we were at a breakfast and he was like, oh yeah, I make like 400K on the side wholesaling. And I was like, 60, 70, 80 hour weeks. Best year was 130. And I feel like I'm losing hair at 19 years old.
Yeah.
Did you just say on the side? Like, that sounds like you don't even do this full time. And so I really just believed in it more than I even knew about it. And so when I left the partnership to go to EXP, it was with the impression I was going to learn everything about wholesaling like that. What I didn't realize was there were so many different layers to wholesaling that it was actually pretty hard to like put together the pieces from direct to seller to creative finance to agent and MLS, which I didn't even know was a thing. I had all these different things that were being thrown at me, from mentorships to sales pitch to let's partner up and do this, this, and this. At one point, I had somebody come to me and say, I have a broker's license. I want you to run the brokerage, be the face of it, and bring all the agents, and I'll just be the broker behind the scenes. I had the craziest things pitched to me at such a young age that I just honestly had to take a step back. So what Steve offered me wasn't even necessarily the relationships and conversation. It was almost like a father figure in real estate. I love when I get to say this because there's always the people that are making assumptions before getting the full story. There was no help. There was no connections. There was no experience in real estate. This was all me on my own, and I had to figure it out. So I had to trust in people that I felt like were actually going to get me to where I needed to be. And I didn't care if it took money. I didn't care if it took time or sacrifice, or I'd even work for free for the matter. But what Steve was willing to offer me was like a father figure of, I'll meet with you every other week. You could call me at any time throughout the week. If there's someone you want to meet that I know, let me know and I will introduce you. And then aside from that, if you close some deals, great. I'll give you a little bit better of a discount or a better split than what most people get. So I had a little bit of experience where I didn't need my hand held as a realtor. So I wasn't necessarily going to be someone that takes too much of his effort away. It was just going to be someone he pours into. But the beauty behind it was that what I had done already in a track record of being in real estate, Steve believed in me too. So what I was able to provide over the next year with relationships and value to him, I think obviously paid him 10x. But then from there, I mean, Steve has just been, he's been my rock.
Yeah.
So.
Man, that's so cool. Yeah, we were just actually talking with Brad Levitt, and his biggest recommendation was to find a mentor. Right?
Have to.
And so I love that you figured that out at such a young age to be like, hey, look, I don't know what I don't know, so I need to go out and find the right people that can mentor me. And fortunate for you, you landed on Steve Trang, who, we had on the show a couple weeks ago, and just it's incredible to see what he's done, the amount of people he's impacted.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, for those of you that are not in real estate, a lot of the names obviously that we're going to throw out, you'll probably not recognize them. Anyone in real estate industry will definitely, recognize a lot of these people that you mentioned. But something that, in fact, a big reason why we, I guess, as a brokerage, and why I was interested in meeting with you was because I think that a lot of people, when they decided to get into wholesaling and flipping homes, and obviously it's exploded, especially in the Mecca, which is Arizona, right, where all of the kingpins, it seems like, for whatever reason, live here. So when that became a big thing, I felt like a lot of people were abandoning the MLS. Like, they felt like if it hits MLS, it's not, there will not be any deals on there.
No deals, no buyers.
You did the opposite.
I didn't have a choice. I mean, I did, but it was accident. I mean, 100%, like, very transparently. I want to sound like the guy that had it all figured out, that, I went to MLS because of whatever. I literally had no money. After spending money into mentorships, and this was multiple, like, I probably spent around 30, 40K into masterminds, mentorships, coaching, all different variety of things. That was my life savings. Like, that was literally at the point where backed up against a wall is the understatement. Now, I didn't struggle for years. I'm very blessed with my struggle and what I had to go through because it was such a short amount of time. But there was a very, very clear point where I went to Templeton and sat down, and I was crying in a coffee shop. Again, 3.5, 4 years of being in real estate, being told I was crushing it by everybody on the internet. I didn't have money. I was about to have to go to either the family that I wasn't talking to at the moment, or I was going to have to go to the girlfriend I was with at the time and say, can you pay my bills?
Wow.
So what my solution was, which when I sat down with Temp, I appreciate the hell out of him for this. He said the way his brain works was, how many months do you have left to live? Like, no savings, no IRA, nothing. Like, what do you have to pay in bills? How many months do you have of that? And I was like 36 days maybe. And he was just like, okay. And so this was after having all the information in the playbook as to how to wholesale. He said, well, what I do is send me your deals, send me your deals, send me your deals. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, I just try to get people to send me deals. And if I'm buying it or if I commit to it, I can still wholesale that deal. And I was like, well, that sounds a lot like what Jamil taught me with micro flipping, but it sounds like it's more of just wholesaling with a realtor. And he was like, bingo. So it was like a light bulb clicked even after paying a bunch of money for mentorships and stuff, that I think part of the reason why I didn't go down the agent route in MLS, I was naive, but I also didn't really get that pushed on me as a narrative. So hearing it from the guy that I trusted and believed in first to say, hey, I did this and it worked, all it did was light a fire under me where I was used to working 12 to 16-hour days. Why not go do that again? So for the next 24 days or whatever, or 20 days it was, I ended up doing that over and over. I have a photo of that check on my phone. There's a lot of times I go back and I look at it. That check was a $30,000 check I got that changed everything. The entire investments, all the masterminds, all that was completely worth it because of that one check. So that $30,000, I was like, what do I do? And I just remember I sat down at the dinner table and the girl I was with, and she's like, well, are you going to take that money and reinvest it? And I was like, no. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I am, nope. Whatever that this was that I just did that costed $0, just a bunch of time.
Yeah.
I'm doing that again and again and again and again. And then I fell into my strategy of the double dip, another accident. I had a transaction coordinator that was helping me. I told you I took 21 of the 22 I fired. The one guy I brought with me, amazing guy, Kyle Holder. I owe so much of my success to this guy and his belief.
He's awesome.
He ended up going and he was our transaction coordinator. And there was deals I started writing offers on the MLS. We got a deal done. And all I remember is he's like, so how do you want to do the commission? And I'm like, what do you mean? I made a $15,000 assignment. The commission on the deal was like another $9,000. And I'm like, we got commission and an assignment on the same deal. I'm like, I'm rich. Like, this is amazing. And so I turned what would be a $15,000 assignment into a $24,000 total payday. And so I was like, let's just split the commission. I obviously changed the structure and all that down the road, but he just did paperwork. He made $4,500. And what I then started to realize, which is where my catchphrase came, the hardest part of being a real estate agent is to find a client, someone that is a buyer or seller that is ready and motivated to utilize you being their person that represents them. The hardest part of being the investor is to find the deal. A deal is a motivated seller that is willing to take a discount on their property. So if I know half the battle is finding someone willing to sell, you might as well look where they already employed a realtor to do so. So now I'm able to bridge the gap, and I started to realize what the hardest part of each person's job was, and I started to problem solve. I didn't need to be some big dispo wholesaler with 50,000 buyers. I need 10.
Yeah.
My first year that I did 250,000 was with 5 people,
Wow.
5 buyers. That's it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so you lean in heavily, and obviously some of that was just it worked out, circumstance and those kind of things. But you realized, hey, there are still deals in the MLS. And not only that, so many people in wholesaling and flipping are spending upwards of, I know we got to a point at our max, we were spending $60,000 a month.
Easily.
Just on postcards, pay-per-click,
Skip tracing
SEO,
systems,
blah, blah, blah.
VAs,
and you're just trying to find these needle in a haystack, out in Arizona, and it's so expensive to find these deals. But then on the MLS, you're like, hey, look, there's already motivated sellers, people that are right there in front of you. Yes, there's more competition. Yes, everyone else gets to see them, but it's also free, right? So like it didn't cost you a dime to acquire that. Not only that, what you brought up, there's the double dip, right? And so, and I think we were similar in that regard where it's like, oh yeah, there's a commission, huh?
They're going to pay it. And
Totally
you're
forgot about
not
that.
charging, the buyer doesn't pay the commission. The seller pays the commission to the realtor. So when the listing agent and the seller come to an agreement to list the property, they come to the agreement of saying 6%, and this is a unicorn deal, but like 6% is what we're going to pay. 3% to the agent that helps me sell it, 3% to the agent that buys it. Okay, so if the agent that's helping the buyer is going to get 3% no matter what, there is no difference that even if you're going to take investment out, if I go buy my next home, I'm not going to use another realtor. I'm going to do it myself. So just like if you're a realtor watching this or listening to this, if you go and you represent yourself in the transaction, you get the commission. There is no difference that you have the equitable interest right to wholesale that contract out to somebody else, get the commission and an assignment fee, and you literally can make just as much, if not more, than the fix and flipper that bought the property to renovate it and flip it.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. And so, now what you've done career-wise, it looks like, okay, you're like, hey, that works. Great. Let's pour gas on it. Let's figure out how to blow this thing up. And so that's clearly what you've leaned into. And so you've gone from really an active investor, and I know that you still are actively investing clearly because there's, money there. But it seems like, is your focus now more so on the education? Maybe talk about what it is that you build. It's on your shirt. What does AI stand for? What is it?
So weird timing of it all. Like, I wish I could get up here and act like I had it all figured out and whatnot, but I didn't. AI was before Chat GPT was a thing.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is obviously like the big talk. Agent investors, I give a shout out to that for Brent and Jamil. Jamil told me I needed to get loud, and Brent was the one that really pushed me to do this. At the time, I was doing a show with Brent, Millionaire Before 30, where he called me one random day and was like, yo, I want to give the blueprint to the younger crowd, and everything I'm trying to do is help the younger generation. So he needed someone that was under 30 to be the vision for it, but wasn't somebody that was trying to fake anything or, show up with the Ferrari and the whatever. I mean, you get it. So we ended up doing that show, and he just kept telling me, he's like, dude, like, you could do this. And so I remember there was a day I was walking around his neighborhood with him, just did like a quick mile or whatever it was. And we were trying to figure out the name, and he's just like, so what do you want to call it? I'm like, well, I'm an investor first, agent second. And I got that from Temp, where I walk in first as the investor to buy the deal, and then I flip my head around as the agent secondary. However, AI sounds cooler. And agent investors, because we utilize the MLS and our license, you don't need to be licensed to do what we do. But if you are licensed, you just get more benefit, you get more profit. So agent investors came to be, honestly, just with Brent, Jamil pushing me. And then also, I always kind of had it in my back pocket. But where I think I'm a little bit different is, I didn't go do 2 deals and then become a guru and then say, hey, here's my course, sign up for whatever. No, I literally went for 3 years before I decided to say, you know what, I feel like I could help people. And what it came down to, the biggest catalyst was that we were doing really well. We were doing 30, 40 deals a month off the MLS and with agents. Very transparently and extremely humbling, I will say, we were doing like 200 to 400K a month.
Whoa.
With like $5,000 a month overhead, $6,000 a month overhead.
Wow.
And let me just be very clear, the biggest expense was a $4,000 a month office. So $2,000 and less is what I was operating with systems and processes.
Wow.
I paid out a lot of money in assignment fees and commissions to my guys. So I didn't, as much as I want to say I made all that money, I didn't. But what it did give me was perspective as to what truly is out there, and it's money. Money, and I think Grant Cardone says this, but you could take like $100 million overnight and nobody would know the difference. That's how much money is circulating in the world. So I started thinking differently. I started like understanding what else was out there. And more importantly, it goes back to schooling. When I was going into real estate, I had a lot of people without having the experience or connections that told me you weren't going to succeed. And don't get me wrong, I tell people very, very, very bluntly, the success rate is low. But I will never tell somebody they won't succeed. That's what I got told by literally counselors, administrators, teachers in high school.
Wow.
So not only was there a lack of support, there was a lack of financial literacy. No disrespect by any means to the education system. And I don't want it to be misconstrued. I hate college, but I love education. Personal development is where it's at. Learning skill sets that will make you money is where it's at. Learning the Pythagorean theorem is, I've never used that. My problem is that I had to look at the source and I was too young because I thought everyone older than me knew more. So when I was looking at teachers that were making 30, 40K a year trying to teach me finance, what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
My vision now is to be able to provide the blueprint for anybody at any age to go and replicate what I've done, but specifically the younger generation.
Yeah.
So fast forward a year, Agent Investors has over 400 members in our community. Our entire goal and blueprint is bigger than Agent Investors. We have a company called Generational Assets. Generational Assets is my entire vision for the future. Generational Assets is going to be a one-stop shop for financial literacy. And you could go in, and if you're trying to learn from real estate, there's drop downs that will teach you all things real estate. There's financial literacy. My CPA is coming in, and they're doing a whole thing based off of how to structure LLCs, how you should go in and how you should set up bank accounts, what you could do for retirement in your 20s to set yourself up to retire by 40. We are trying to give a blueprint to where at the end of the day, because I appreciate education, when someone gets out of high school, my goal is that they either go to a trade school, they go to college if they are going to be something that requires a college degree, or option 3, generational assets for less than $5,000. You can invest into your future, and that $5,000 should at minimum 10x your return. So if you put $5,000 in, you will learn a skill set that will give you $50,000 a year. If you put $100,000 in, you will make $1 million a year. Now, obviously, this isn't overnight. This isn't something you're going to go through just a few modules and you know how to be a millionaire. But if you're willing to put in the time and the commitment, you're not paying me. You're investing into your future.
Man. Yeah, a lot to unpack there as well, because I think that what you're doing is not only obviously are you building up this this platform AI, and it's focused and leaning in on realtors, and because there really is a mindset with a lot, and you and I both have experienced this and seen it, where realtors a lot of time they are just there for the deal, they're there for the commission.
It's
right?
transactional.
They love that commission at the end. They make that, and then it's like, okay, I'm done, and then let me go hunt and go find another deal.
Next day I'm broke, I got to do it again.
That's it. It's this constant rat race, and there's so many with that mentality of like, no, I got to go chase the next deal. And even if you make several six figures, right, $200,000-$300,000, you have nothing to show for it. You have no assets, and really it comes down to financial literacy, right, which is exactly the problem that you are there to solve. So you're not just going to go build this platform where it's doing well and obviously growing and expanding, but you have a much bigger vision. Where I found most successful people, it's not just about what I'm building right now. You're always 3-4 steps ahead, right, in your mind, thinking, hey, this is really where I want to be, but this is a stepping stone to get there. So I love that you're doing that. Something that Steve brought up, Steve Trang, when we were in our podcast a couple weeks ago, that I found really interesting, because, and I don't know if this is something that you struggle with as well, but he was like, look, as business owners, we do not take the time to celebrate our wins, right? And he's like, and I've had it told to me, the reason why that is because in our minds, that already happened. That already, like, we were going to go out to pursue something, and of course it was going to work. We're optimistic. It's just going to work. But that's like, 2 years ago, right? Like, we, in our mind, the successes that we're seeing today have already taken place, and we're on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed that with yourself?
Of course. Yeah. And I think that, it's kind of hard to explain this, at least from my perspective, but I think a lot of it's awareness and it's appreciation. It was actually my brother that said this to me, but he was like, if you don't fail, you're not going to succeed. So I think the struggle gave me the awareness at a young age. And then it gave me the perspective of like, okay, like, not everything is going to work. So I think to an extent, yes, I agree with you. I think on the bigger picture, for sure, a lot of us as true bred entrepreneurs, we don't celebrate the wins because it's usually the little things that we oversee. So like, for an example, if you get a deal under contract and then you sell it, you are celebrating the selling of it by going and doing whatever. But what you're not celebrating and having the awareness is that you did something right enough to get the deal under contract. Even if you got it too high or whatever it was, or even if you sold it, yeah, you did your job, but celebrate the fact that you got the contract when there's millions of other investors out there. You did it. So yeah, I think that it's just awareness, it's perspective. It comes with time and experience. A lot of times where most people fail is that they're out there comparing themselves to somebody else. So they're too far behind and they feel like they're playing catch up the whole time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, how have you been able to avoid that? Cause I think that in social media world, and I know that you're pretty heavy on the social media side. Like how do you avoid the trap of comparison and just staying in your lane, staying focused on what you're doing? What are some strategies that you've seen have worked for you?
So I don't think my advice is necessarily the best because what it took me was losing $40,000. So don't lose $40,000. But the hardest part I think was just being young and thinking that everybody older than me thought they knew it. So what it came down to, and I don't remember exactly who it was. Even if I did, I wouldn't say it. But like I can't remember exactly what the moment was that it clicked that I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, but you're trying to come across like you do. That's what I realized most people in the world are doing. Most people are out there looking for the validation. They're looking for the whatever. I mean, literally on the way here, I was talking to one of the guys on my team about it, where people that aren't even the guy want to act like they're the guy. That's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah.
So what I say is that if you want to be the guy, take responsibility. Understand it's a marathon, not a sprint. Understand that what you're seeing on social media, first off, is 100% bull. Second, you're comparing yourself to somebody else that you don't even know the variables as to where they had to go through to get to where they're at that may not even be real.
Yeah.
So yeah, you see the Lambo, you see the Ferrari. That thing could be leased.
Yep.
The amount of times I've seen people hold up checks and they're not even the one paying the bills.
Yeah.
Dude, like that's not it. That's not what this is. So the comparison side, I had to learn that not everybody had it figured out. I don't have it figured out. I teach people and I tell them I also don't know what I'm doing a lot of the time. The cool thing is that if you get the genuine and the like vulnerability from the people that are helping you, if they don't have the answer, they could typically get the answer figured out. So that's where I think it comes down to. It goes back to perspective. If you're over there comparing yourself, just take a step back. And also, again, it goes back to awareness. But like most of the stuff when you're comparing, you're actually hurting yourself more than you even realize. Your friends, your family, your spouses. The amount of times you're over there, I wish my spouse was like this, or I wish that my friends did this, or I wish this happened to me. Get off your ass and make it happen.
Yeah.
I promise you, whatever you want in the world, you could do.
Yeah.
And that's, I talk to my buddy Tyler Blair about this all the time. But I'm like, there's no rules in life. Like, it could be a random Tuesday, and if you wanted to, you could be up till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
There's no bedtime. There's no, you have to do life this specific way. It's the word I just used a minute ago about variables. The minute you start to understand variables are fully in your control, there are some that are out. Like, yes, you're where you were born and what you were brought up by learning and stuff like that. Yes, but that's not permanent. That's not your destination. If you want it bad enough, you can do it. I'm not telling you to go drop $40,000. I'm not even telling you to go invest into me. I literally was on a call today with a girl. One of our sales guys called me. He's like, this girl wanted to talk to you. I told her not to buy my course. She's like, well, I was going to get a loan, do this. I'm like, I wouldn't. And she's like, why? I'm like, because I just wouldn't. What you could learn on YouTube to start, you've been doing this for 3 weeks. Figure out if this is something that you're willing to do for 3 years.
Yeah.
Then if it's something you're willing to do for 3 years and you're mentally committed to it, okay, then we can handle the emotional decisions from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So important to be genuine. And I was just thinking too, like, I wonder what it was like for me. I don't remember like the exact time or day or whatever, who I was talking to, when you realize, and it's such a sad event when it happens, is as a kid, you really do look up to your parents and you think, man, they know everything. They got life figured out. And then at some point, obviously, I'm sure at some point as you're a teenager or whatever, you realize like, they're just making it up as they go along. They actually don't know what they're talking about. It's kind of a sad thing when you realize that, yeah, everyone is just kind of, but at the same time, it also is enlightening to be like, oh, okay, like we're all just trying to figure this out. Like life doesn't come with a manual. You have a kid and it doesn't come with an instruction manual. Like this is what you need to do to make sure that you don't screw the baby up. Like it's like really unfortunate that they don't have something like that. But what I have noticed over the past, especially the past decade, in the business world, and also this has been a benefit from social media, has been there, and then there's a lot of fakers. There's a lot of people out there, obviously, that abuse it. But there are people now like yourself who are like, hey, don't make all the mistakes that I made, and you know what? Let me give you like a fast track so that you can just skip all of that process. Here's the fast pass. Do it like this and you're going to succeed. And yes, you got to pay some money up front, but that will be the best money you ever spent.
For sure.
It's going to 10x what you did.
And I think that mentorships are great. I think the biggest thing is that there's a few things. So first off, back to the parents, what I've learned just through perspective is that most parents, even while they don't know what they're doing, they typically lead with the fact that they want their kids to have more than what they ever could have on their own. Yeah. They want their situation to be able to propel them. Now, as for mentorships, where people are at, what they need to understand is that mentorships are, I always explain it like the Disney Fast Pass. It's the all access Fast Pass to the information. At a certain point, though, if you're not ready to accept and implement the actionable steps that you're given inside the mentorship, that's when it's not ready for you. You're not ready for the mentorship. So I think mentorship is absolutely the most important thing, but most importantly, it's personal development. It's the understanding and the no comparison. It's the, I'm going to get 1% better every day. I tell everyone in my community, 2%. Because if everybody else is working on 1%, if you're getting 2% better every day, look at the compounding chart. You'll be surprised at where you're at in 6 months. So everything about this is that it's just slow and steady. You don't need to have all the answers. But also, too, the amount of people that what they don't even realize. I got to give this example. It was my favorite rapper, Russ. I didn't even realize that this was like a thing, but I saw it on a podcast so it was probably about a week ago. And I brought it up with my diamond students. And I was like, hey, there was this quote that I was talking about that where I forget who the guy was interviewing, but he was asking Russ, like, hey, what was the best advice you've ever received? And I love this because forget mentorships, forget who's done what and all that stuff. What was the best advice a guy that's worth over $100 million has ever received? And what he said was something, again, this is a week ago. I was like, he was like, what if it turned out better than you could have imagined? And I was like, oh, what was the worst advice you've ever received? Be realistic. And I was like, all right, I like it. Be realistic is the worst advice he's ever received, which was similar to me being told I was going to fail in real estate. What if it could turn out better than you ever expected? There's people I talk to that don't have a home, that don't have a car, that don't have more than $25 in their bank account. I've been there. So what I can say is, how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to do to get out of that situation? Because if it could turn out better than you could have ever imagined, I could tell you right now, I'm very confident that I could go make 6 figures a year without trying that hard every year for the rest of my life from the skill set that I have in real estate. My goal is not to hit 6 figures, but if that's my safety net, knowing that I can make at least 6 figures a year, I'm never going to be employed again. That's where I think most people want to be, and especially in my generation, we're all about the wanting it now and how do I make as much money as possible for doing as little as work.
Yep.
So if you want to do that, you better be an entrepreneur, or you better know how to provide a service of value that is going to be worth at least a dollar amount that you're okay living off of.
Yeah.
That's it.
So good. I love that, actually. Never heard that before, but it's so true. I hated, one of the things that always would frustrate me was at the annual goal setting, in the past, I'd always be like, well, what's realistic? Like, yeah, we can grow 5% or 10%. And it's always like, man, really? Is that it? Like,
that's your increase.
I understand, and I understand the thinking and mindset behind that. But at the same time, at some point, you have to take a big swing. You got to go for the fence.
You're given one life. And I don't know if I'm just young and naive to the world, but like, I think people get stuck because of comfort. And I get it. It goes back to variables. You have the kid. You're in a situation where you need to pay the bills. You need to do all these things. I understand. But then you can't complain.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing that I have to tell people at like 25 years old is like, you're 50 and you're over here wanting to change your life, but it sounds to me based on what you're saying, you're really not serious. That's why you're in the position you're in. And I don't mean that rude or any disrespect at all. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
If you wanted it bad enough, I have people in my community that are 65 years old that have gone out there and they've gotten deals done. Never had any real estate experience. They've bought and sold homes. They wanted it bad enough and they made it happen.
Yep.
So
good. Okay. Well, we have 3 questions we like to ask at the end. And so the first question, softball question is, what's the best podcast or book that you've read recently that's really impacted you, that you've liked?
So this was actually recommended to me by Steve. I've read this book. This is my 3rd time. Who Not How, by far best book in the world. I honestly think the 3rd time around it's hitting me differently than it did the first 2 times. And I think it's because we're at the point of scaling. So a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff where I'm at is I need the who, not the how. I can't do everything on my own. And this goes back to if I'm trying to do everything at 100% effort, realistically, I'm probably at about 80% effort on everything, meaning that I'm sacrificing a lot of others. If I could have somebody else that's not me come in and do it at 70 to 75% of capacity, meaning that we're dropping the ball 25 to 30% of the things, that is better than me being good the guy trying to juggle everything.
Yeah.
So who, not how, 100%. Podcast, I'm actually not really big of like a podcast listener, but
Yeah.
I always just give kudos to Steve,
Yeah.
Real Estate Disruptors.
Yeah. No, he's awesome. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Steve. I love his podcast too. So thank you. Okay, so second question is trying to think actually. What is my second question? If you were to give yourself advice, and this is funny because actually everyone that you're the youngest I've had on the show. And so a lot of people all say, if you can go back 10 years, right? And so for a lot of us, I'm 40 now. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, if I go back. So, but you've also had a lot going on in that short period of time.
Sure.
But if you can go back to when you first got started in real estate, right? What is a bit of advice that you give yourself?
Trust your gut. Everything I've done, I wouldn't change it. There's moments I've gone back and I've written down in journals and stuff. I wish I started wholesaling sooner. I'd be worth more. I wish I did this differently. Everything happened the way it was supposed to, and I wouldn't change a thing. I wish I had a little more awareness for sure, but you can't teach it. You have to go through it. So just trust your gut. Whatever it is you feel, it's probably right.
Love it. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so last question. What was the biggest growth year for you? You look back on it and you're like, man, that was like my biggest leap year or, trampoline.
This is going to be one of the weirdest things to say because I know a lot of the people in the podcast here are going to be real estate. My best year was 2022, where everybody else in the industry went down. All these people lost money on flips, lost money on, and don't get me wrong, like we had a flip department and stuff and it did not end well.
Yeah.
But what I was able to do last year was a lot of like personal growth where cutting off relationships, putting my foot down, setting expectations and actually holding people accountable. My leadership growth last year was astronomical. And I think it was a mix of agent investors and the market going down and me realizing, oh, I'm just making a lot of money. I don't have structure. So I've had to go in the last like really 7-8 months and I've restructured everything. Entities, SOPs, KPIs, what my team's doing every day, what our vision is. Everybody's back in the vehicle. We just started scaling and bringing more people in. I would say last year without even thinking about it.
Wow. And see that's also my answer as well is last year, because anyone that is in Arizona real estate, interest rates going from 3 to 7, pretty much everything just stopped, right? It was a crazy year. But isn't it so interesting though that, we look back on that as like, man, that was so hard. That struggle was crazy. And obviously our revenue, went down quite a bit. But I think the biggest takeaway, and this is a big reason for the name of the podcast, was, hey, you got to rush to fail. You got to be okay with failure in a way that it's all about getting back up, dusting yourself off, figuring out, and not just that, but becoming better. And so, I was talking to Steve too, and again, this is all just reminding me of conversations with him as well. But he was like, man, if only I ran my business in the good times like I do in the bad times. Can you imagine how much we would have crushed it,
Absolutely.
But revenue a lot of times will hide bad habits. You almost were blessed if a project took an extra 6 months on construction. It was like, great, you just made an extra 10%. How did that happen? And so it was just covering up all these issues that we had underlying, but revenue a lot of times will do that.
For sure. And I love how you said that too. Like the name of the podcast and everything, it's great. People are so scared of failure. Like what happens if you don't take the risk? What happened? And that's more scary to me.
That's a decision you make too, right?
For sure. And I always put this relative to, I forget who said it. I think it was Benson with Privy, but I don't know. I got to give credit to that guy. But basically, he refers to real estate as baseball. And if you can understand to be a professional baseball player, what's a good batting average? 300?
Yeah.
So that means batting 1,000 is going 10 for 10, 5 for 5, whatever. Batting 300 is a Hall of Fame career. So that means 70% of the time, they're striking out. They're popping up. They are not getting on base. 30% of the time, they're not even hitting a home run. They're just getting on base. How many people are swinging for the fences every freaking day and feel like they are just, I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, guess what? It's because you didn't start off in T-ball.
Yep.
Then make your way up to the little leagues. Then make your way to high school or junior high school, then high school. Then make your way to the minor leagues or even college, then minor leagues. Then you've got to work your way through minor leagues to major leagues. There's different steps. And I think that the way I look at that, T-ball is wholesaling. You have to get your foot in the door, make mistakes, don't lose your money, but be as lean as possible and go and try to get on base.
Yep.
When you get on base, guess what? You've already graduated. You're in high school. By the time you're in high school, the next deal you close, now you're over there in your college or minors or whatever it is. You're able to understand where the process is by just putting things in relative to different comparisons. That's where I don't think comparison's bad. Put it in relative to what other professionals are doing and understand how many times you're failing more than you're winning. Do you think that every person that's worth $1 billion has done everything right every time? No, I guarantee you the only thing that made them a billionaire wasn't even the relationships at the right place, right time. That probably had a lot to do with it. It was because they failed more than you.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And that to me is like Elon Musk. He always, comes to mind when it's like he's totally comfortable with failure, right?
Have to be.
Massive, because what he's doing are things that no one's ever done before.
How many spaceships have blown up in the last year?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You think he's going to walk away and be like, I did my best?
Keep on going. Yep. Just when's the next one? Let's launch. Let's go. It doesn't even phase him. Doesn't skip a beat.
Love it.
Man. Yeah. This was so much fun. Ryan, where can people find you?
Social media, just look up my name. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Awesome. And then Agent Investor, do they go there for
agentinvestors.com? I mean, dude, I'm a bad sales guy. I don't know. I don't buy my course if you don't have the money. If you're looking and you vibe for what we teach, by all means, check it out. I would love to chat with someone on the phone before they pull the trigger, just to make sure that they're the right fit for us and that we're the right fit for them. But agentinvestors.com, if they wanted to check out our community. But more importantly, check out social media and make sure I'm legit, and then make sure that I'm doing what you guys are trying to do.
Yep. And I can definitely second that. We've also, taken the course. I've seen what you've done. I actually highly recommend that people that are just getting started out or that are real estate investors or agents more specifically, that they should look into that so they can take their career maybe another step.
Appreciate that.
Not just be real estate agents, but investors as well. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.